push to speak. Hello, testing, testing.
I'll say hello too. Rosarzon?
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started, and I'll try to remember and remind everybody, speak into a mic, make sure your little talk button's on so that anybody online can hear us as well, okay? So initially, we'll just kind of review the documents. I emailed the first few documents to you last week, I believe, and they were links in an email, and then this week I sent you the results of some surveys, and then this morning I sent you a link to your survey. And you don't have to do, I mean, right now it shouldn't be done. It could be, but I wanted you to get all this information before then each of you say, this is what I think the top 3 things are. And then once we have that from each of you, I wanted to talk about, okay, now how do we as one voice take a look at everybody's needs? Some things are going to overlap. What can we be willing to compromise on, okay? So the first document that I had sent to you, question? Really? Okay, I'll check it. I'll check that in a minute, make sure you get it. Okay, it may have got dropped in my draft. I put together a list of possible priorities. These are things I know that are going on, that are happening, could be. Now, we can today expand this list. There may be something you're very concerned with that's not reflected on this list, and we very much can add it, and that can become one of the priorities. So I just thought I'd go through them real quick first. Reading intervention has been a conversation we've had, especially at our secondary level, for several months. And Ms. Flores, thank you for bringing that to us. And I wanted to make sure it was reflected specifically on here because, to be honest with you, it is important. Obviously, it's very important. High reliability schools implementation. We have spent considerable dollars on this. This coming year will likely be our last year of full, just because of the price of it, okay? But I still think it's worthy because it is some of the best training we could ever bring to our schools, and truly it's being brought truly to our schools. Class size, that's always a conversation, right? It's important to know what our class size is, be aware of it. We don't want it to grow too much, especially since we've consolidated 2 schools. We want to make sure we control those factors and watch for it. Recently, and you're going to hear some information about this, Mr. Hernandez, in a few minutes, NMPED released what I'm calling the accountability scores. They don't have it's not necessarily a report card any longer. It might be referred to that, but I don't think it's worded that way. But we have some designations, and so we want to make sure at some level you know where each school is at. I will say PED is going to have to get us a lot more information because we don't really know how all the numbers got created, and we need to understand that, if it's attendance, if it's proficiency level, if it's growth. So there's still some details PED needs to release, but those are important. Safety and security is always a conversation. We all know that obviously that's been something that I think is very important, and I continue to work on different aspects of that with agencies outside of the district. Curriculum's always a good conversation. What are we teaching? This is something I really think is something we want to be aware of, because some communities, and it could happen in our community, someone could bring up some concerns around curriculum, and we need to be poised to be able to say, how do we address that? How are we taking care? We heard one of our breakout sessions was about library and how to manage. We don't necessarily want to be the one banning books. And you see where communities are wrestling with, literally you had a story today of a board member that went in a library, took books out, walked out the door with books. And, you know, there's a student has some constitutional rights. And so I think we need to be poised to be able to respond to this and be ready for it. And then also help our teachers understand, and I'm going to suggest even any teacher, but especially AP teachers, it's common that they use some high level, sometimes controversial literature to teach specific items. When they do that, I do believe they have a responsibility to notify parents prior to their child being exposed to that. Give the parents an opportunity to decide whether their child's going to participate or not, and if they choose not to, be prepared to give an alternative assignment. I think that's a fair space to be, and we got a little pickle on that a year or so ago at Alta Vista, and it was a teacher that just neglected to notify, and you can do an opt-out. You can just say, look, we're doing this. If you want your child to opt out, sign this and send it back. Right? So you're not asking permission, you're asking them to opt out. Well, if they choose not to take care of it, well, you know, that's on them, but communication is important. We know, social emotional. That's a big bucket, and we can talk about restorative practices and those type of things under that. We can talk about mental health therapists and how that's working and capturing kids' hearts. And then today, you know, it all kind of started lining up for me a little bit when I start talking about bullying and how those kids are struggling, and how do we recognize that that's the space to keep something very tragic from occurring, intervene over here, as opposed to hardening our targets. And that helped me today. We know that we have 2 major construction projects coming up. Gadsden Middle School is already well on its way. Chaparral Middle School is coming. And those are really important to us, and the pieces of it. And our, you know, there's something that's going to be with us for 50 years. That's what a building is, usually in New Mexico, 50 years. And so it's not a light decision to make. Graduation rates, I want to make sure you're aware of what those are and maybe how we can impact them. A little conversation today about schools and freshmen. What was the statistic that was thrown at us is a student that fails no classes as a freshman is 3 times more likely to graduate. So should we be putting extra effort into freshmen? Probably, right? And that leans towards, you know, Mr. Wogmuth and Mr. Hernandez have been working towards freshman academies. That's been a conversation, you know, and we've already, Gadsden High School made a shift in how people are, where they're housed. She had some people move classrooms so she could keep freshmen in one building. Less traffic, less movement, easier to maintain and supervise and add more support. So there's, you know, some of those things are really heading towards where we're at. Dual language, we know that's dual language and sustainable models. What I couldn't argue with anybody that says a child that exposed to dual language is a stronger student. I don't think anybody would argue that. But this thought, and Ms. Arizona and I have had this conversation now, and I think she really gets it, is this thought of dual language in every school. The truth is, financially, we'll break the bank. It'll only take a couple more schools and we'll break the bank. Financially, it'll be a lift to ever pull that off. And then I think there's a conversation, more importantly, around quality. At the end of the day, do we want a sticker on the door that says, oh, we're a dual language school, but not quality in that dual language? Or do we want quality dual language? And I think our family, again, I think, you know, our families deserve that option, if you will. Of course, you know, if you talk to Nubia, she's going to say, dual language is the answer, I'll prove it to you. And I keep telling her, good, prove it to me, right? I want higher test scores out of dual language schools than transition schools, and that hasn't happened. That hasn't occurred. So I'm not going to argue that we haven't got the right model yet. I do believe, and we use, what did we use? Spicy? We have a spicy bilingual director who will make sure that we're pushing towards that, okay? And we love that about her. Structured literacy, huge initiative, statewide, very important. Letters is a part of that conversation, which is a very specific training. Teachers, some of you have already heard from them, they feel like it's a college course. It's hard. It's not easy. It's a lot of work, and it's heavy PD on teachers, so sometimes they push back a little bit on it. Are we K3, K5? We're K5 trained in letters?
Well, that's where we're at.
That's where we're headed. Okay. So, we're working through that, and we're well on our way. But it's not an easy process. Okay. It is required, though, in New Mexico. Now, one of our struggles, and Estrella may jump into some of this, is they want letters training done in the teacher's first year. A first-year teacher, we're just trying to get them comfortable with classroom management, and I'll be honest, we've kind of pushed back a little on that says, give us 3 years. Give us a chance here, because these first-year teacher, I just got out of school. I'm getting my classroom. I'm now responsible for, 17, 19, 21 little people. You want me to go back to school right now? It's a lot to ask. And so, yeah. Is your mic? Make sure you got it. Oh.
Majority of our teachers that are new hires are not teacher certified. They are ACP. So they don't have the background knowledge or the understanding to take such an in-depth course, right? So you want to think about that. I think we're up to 85% of hires are alternative. Okay, and so that what Mr. Dempsey's saying is even more important.
Yeah, and I think the biggest challenge we're having is the PED has allowed 2 years for them to do this letters piece. The issue with us is, okay, you're a first year teacher and they're allowing 2 years, so now we won't let you do it the first year, but what's going to happen the second year? We're going to cram it all in. And so we're struggling with that piece a little. We're trying to come up with some ideas on how to support them, because on top of what they're doing with the PD, they have outside work, which is like a class. They have homework. And so that's on top of their coursework, their new teacher training, and then everything that's required for the school is really overwhelming them, and that affects our retention. That's a big piece that we're trying to figure out. The good thing is, though, as everybody goes through the letters training and they do well on assessments that they have, they are eligible for reading endorsements. So that's great for us, for the kids.
Could the letter training be done like during vacation? Or how long is the training for it?
So there's 4 sessions of full days, but even though we do 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring, but with those 4 sessions come about 30 hours of outside work. On top of, they have to do new teacher requirement training, which is separate. And I don't remember how many hours that is, so that's like another 80 hours. And then they still have to do all the PD that's required for our curriculum, or everything that's required by the PED, for example, and through HR, through us, and so.
I'm going to say that the solution in my eyes, and it doesn't work for the alternative. Well, it could. Higher ed needs to be delivering structured literacy and letters as a core course, but it's just not there yet. And those conversations are occurring, but that needs to be in their program, so that we're not having to come back and get it done.
To do it again.
Especially if it's required by the PED for public schools. I mean, it's a required initiative.
Yep.
We have to do it.
So is this coming out of their pockets, or is this coming out of,
No, it's us.
that we take care of that?
It's just time. It's just that time factor for those new teachers, and yeah, Rosie does a lot with new teachers. Yeah.
Yeah, so a little bit about how we're working with the new teachers. We have a very structured program right now, and Estrella is going to touch base a little bit about this. We've had to create this GISD University, like really providing all the support to our new teachers, because we need to understand they have a degree maybe in English or maybe in something else completely different, never have taken a class on education. They're going to start into the classroom. They have no idea when you take classroom management, and they really literally look at you with empty eyes like, what are you talking about? And that's like the first rule for any teacher, right? All of us as teachers know it's like classroom management is the key for you to be able, your kids be able to learn. If you don't have classroom management, So the mentorship program is covering all that. What we are working right now is to have all our new teachers register and going through the program, which is called LEAP, that is coming from CES. We have a contract with LEAP. I have been approved on the application. I applied for Title II to be able to support new teachers in this process. And if they were on their own, they will have to be paying for the LEAP charge, which is $2,000. I think this year is going to be $3,000. We are covering everything. Besides that, we cover for all the books that they might need. We cover for them, for example, now that we had in the first week of June, we had the graduation of our first year teachers on LEAP. They went to Albuquerque. We covered for all their expenses going to Albuquerque and graduate from the LEAP program. So we are trying to support our new teachers as much as we can when it comes also with the expenses, so this is not an added expense to them. Next week, for example, they're going to be with us the whole week. So that's one of the initiatives we're having right now with the mentorship program. We're going to have like an intense class. So they're not under contract yet. We are going to be paying them a stipend for being there. So next week, there's going to be an intense training the whole week for mentors to be more effective mentors. So they're going to be really training in how to coach the new teachers. And we're going to be a lot of training for the new teachers so that they can have the foundations. Besides that, if next week, hopefully when you go to the board meeting, will be great if you can see what they're receiving, because every new teacher is having this huge carrying back box. We give them all the supplies for the classroom for the first year, so they don't even gonna have to buy anything. We spent like $70,000 just on supplies for the new teachers so that they can take into the classrooms. And we're giving them the stipend for being there with us next week, like really on intense trainings to understand, because you say IEP and they look at you and they have no idea what is this, what's an IEP. So they're gonna be through the year they receive all this training on special ed, because they need to understand how to treat a kid. They need to understand the foundations of bilingualism. They need to understand so many things on how to teach and teaching strategies. So we are really focusing a lot on them. So next week is the first year that we really finally putting this initiative on having them before they start the contract. And we have teachers, new teachers, mentors working on this, so hopefully they start the first week stronger and ready to be successful in the classroom.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Villalobos. Another item is tutoring. We've had a lot of conversations around tutoring. I really appreciate federal programs and how much support they've been able to have. We had about 1,200 students, right, participate in tutoring. I guess I'm going to say I'm content with that number. I'd love to see that number double this year, because we're offering the Cadillac. There's no better tutoring out there, and Sylvan is still coming to our buildings, where the other one is online, and people have shared their own personal experiences with some of this tutoring, and it's been very impactful. So getting more and more people engaged and trying to entice them. Rosie,
Tutoring, one of the things that Sylvan is going to be doing next week, the Sylvan people are getting together with all the principals, giving them the reports on the pre and the post on each one of the kids that receive tutoring. So principals want to see the results and how they're guiding and everything. So next week, Sylvan is going to be visiting principals, sitting with them, explaining this is where your kids is, this is how we move them, that's where they are, so that there's a continuum. So that's going to be really helpful. And I encourage you, if we can go and visit on the webpage, because we're going to have an amazing webpage on tutoring.
Rosie, I
It's really
also want to add that Sylvan next week will be at central office using our phones recruiting. We've already started recruiting for tutoring for this year, because they're very involved. They're going to be in our offices calling parents and students to because I don't think, to Mr. Dempsey's point, 1,200 is good, but we offered a free service for 12,000 students, and so we're hoping that more would take advantage of that piece.
Does this include
I'm not familiar with that piece. I just know Elisa had asked me yesterday, but I think that we're doing just really cold calls, as many as we can in different schools. We're trying to recruit
It's
kids.
going to all students.
I think, and to Rosie's point, we're gonna try and align that data of those who went to tutoring to see, we have scores now, so let's see what the impact was for us in that aspect. And since we do have data, I'm wondering, knowing Ms. Cumplido, I'm sure we disaggregated data and maybe looked for students specifically that they will be calling homes for that. But the opportunity is still available to everybody. You might have seen it on the reminds. It was on the webpage. We'll send them out again to the campuses as they have their open houses and
Yeah,
things like that.
and another thing we're gonna facilitate for the principals, Sylvan hires our teachers, and in some schools they're bringing people from other places, right? But they are trying to hire our teachers to do tutoring. So they pay them directly. We have nothing to do with that, and they train them. So we have nothing to do with that. But we are paying for instructional assistance at the schools so that they can stay there and coordinate and help and support, so there is not such a heavy load for our teachers being willing to mentoring, because if they have to do the paperwork and they have to be making sure that the kids are going into the bus and making sure, so we're trying to facilitate teachers' lives, and we are allowing these year principals. We told them this week at the principals meeting, all the instructional assistance that you might need to support your teachers so that they can provide the tutoring, we are going to be covering that expense also. So the instructional assistance can really facilitate this tutoring happening in the afternoons.
So now, my next question is we know that Sylvan, and I know that it's been brought to my attention, and I believe to maybe some of the board members, is the fact that the dual language or the Spanish speaking are not getting the tutoring that they're supposed to get. Have we fixed
Yeah.
that?
Let me tell you, Sylvan doesn't have it in Spanish. Carnegie does. But Carnegie is online. And Carnegie is even, I'm paying 3 times more for Carnegie than for Sylvan. It's extremely expensive. So it's like what Mr. Dempsey says, like Sylvan is the Cadillac and Carnegie is what will be the Mercedes, so I don't know what. I don't know. It's like super expensive, but it's amazing because they accommodate to the kids' schedules and to everything. Last semester, the numbers for Carnegie were very low. We're trying to encourage that a lot because the online tutoring has the Spanish component completely. And we are trying to encourage, and some parents have been asking us, there's some parents that say, can I have both? I say, of course you can have both if you want. I think it's too much for a kid, but if you want to have both, let's have both. But there's very few parents that really want to do that, right? But that's the option. And remember, we have also the option of supporting the kids on preparing for the SAT. And that is something that we're going to be working really hard with the principals, right? To really support the kids that are getting ready for the SAT. Is like an opportunity because they have an amazing training for that. For the scores on the SAT.
So now, Ms. Rosie,
And that's online
is
also.
this training or online, is it done in school or is it done at home?
At home? That's at
'Cause
home?
I think that might be a place
That's at
where we
home.
might have a problem because some of our parents, should I say, may not be computer literate to be able to sit there for an hour, 30 minutes, to give them their, to make sure that they're going through the training. What are we doing as a district for that?
We are trying. So let me tell you something. There was, I don't know, there's this lady, I know you're familiar with her, Maria Chaparro, because she went to the state and everything, right? Maria just gave us an amazing, she applied for ARP on her own, for individual people applying for the ARP funds for the Sunland Park area. She was working on creating she really make an amazing work. And I think I have the report here if you want me can share with you later, because I think I have it here, her report, the final. She did like a very intense focus groups with our parents in the community, not only in Sunland, she went even to the area of Anthony. She couldn't go to the other areas because her grant was very specific, but it represents what it needs. Really identifying, her group is called Mamacitas Cibernéticas. And what the intention of this is really to find out what are we lacking and what is it that our parents really need when it comes to technology. So I've been working with her because what I did is like the results of what she gave us, I use it for the Title I application so that I can use funding to provide parents with this cybernetic information and classes that they can. So we are putting all this together so that we can train our parents, and we're gonna offer to the parents, okay, there's this class, this is gonna be happening at your school in the afternoon. And that's what we wanna do, offer parents classes in the afternoon to target those needs that they need, like I don't know how to connect on the computer, all the things that they say that they don't know what to do, things that are very hard for them, because we find out that for us, we're getting familiar on having a scan code, and it's like we just put our phone, right? So parents is like, how you do that? What is things like that? That for some of us is like so easy to do. For parents, it's a lot of challenge. So we're gonna be trying to put together really good classes on how we can support our parents on helping the kids. And then when it comes to Carnegie Learning, all the parents need to do is have the kid connected. They don't need to do anything else. The tutors from Carnegie take over, and they have perfect Spanish speakers in that tutoring.
Now, is that only gonna be just for
For the
K
whole
through
district.
6, or is it gonna be out
No, all over.
for middle
K-12.
schools and whatnot?
K to 12.
Okay.
So one question I had, or I have, they have addressed this, that there's that pushback when they hear that it's teachers within, that it's Sylvan, but it's teachers that are getting, that are doing the tutoring. So do we have something, because I know you're saying that they're gonna be here next week, where Sylvan can provide, like, this is what the training looks like for the teachers? I mean, obviously, you're not questioning their abilities, but it seems like many times the parents feel like, they tried the tutoring already, it wasn't effective when it was in-house, and so now bringing the Sylvan, even though that they're being provided this training,
Yep.
there's a little
You
bit
know,
of
that's something that the parents, we need to maybe we're not communicating right, but they need to understand the tutoring for Sylvan is extremely structured and research based. There's no way that they are not successful. When they're not successful, let me tell you what is happening. There are kids that have been going to tutoring 1-2 sessions, and then the parents don't take them again. And they say it's not working. It's not gonna work in 2 sessions. You need to finish the program. And the program has 30 sessions on it. And that's the commitment of a parent to do this.
and perhaps having that evidence once they provide, this is where they were standing, this is where we got them. I think that might be also where
That's
parents
what
are
we-
going to see that
exactly.
this is effective.
That is effective, and that's what they want to be working with our principals next week, so that we're gonna have all that data. That's what we're working on right now, so that they know. But it's and this is the hard part that we have. Is the commitment from the parents. We are providing really an amazing opportunity. This is gonna be the last year that we can really provide this amazing opportunity, and it's commitment. And that's what the message that we need to deliver, how important it is like, we want our kids to be successful, but you as a parent need to come and be a partner with us. Right? Mm-hmm.
So my question is, who's holding, okay, so Carnegie, it's strictly Carnegie employees online, and so if I was to enroll my son or daughter into Carnegie, will it be with another group of kiddos, or is it gonna be one-to-one attention? So is there an advantage to Carnegie versus Sylvan?
Yeah, Carnegie is only 3 kids on a group. When they were doing one-on-one is with the SPED kids.
Okay, and then Sylvan, what is our
Sylvan is 8-to-1.
8-to-1?
Mhm.
Then my next question is, how are we determining, because say me and Claudia and Arlene are students, my needs might be very different than Arlene's and Claudia, so how are we
There are
structuring?
Yeah, no, there's a when they decide to do, there's a Sylvan that makes a test on the kids. They have a specific test, so they know what grade where to put them and everything, and they do everything based on standards.
Okay, and then who is holding our teachers accountable at Sylvan, which are Gadsden employees for lack of a better word?
Sylvan.
Sylvan. So they
Sylvan.
come around and
Oh my God, yes, they
monitor
are. They
and
have a
serve.
coordinator per school and everything, yes.
And these are
And
Sylvan
I'm telling you,
people.
we're about to open an office there for Sylvan in the district, because they are like, you can see, 2 of them are all the time on Miss Cumplido's office.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
they've
you.
been there a lot. Yeah, no, they have a coordinator per school, and they are on top of it, and they supervise, and they get into the tutoring and supervise. Mhm.
How are we getting, how are we getting to make, or how do we make sure that parents that are putting in to either Carnegie or Sylvan, how are we making sure that they're keeping up their part of the bargain per se? How do we keep them committed?
We can't. That's the hard part, Mr. Gan. How we can
Here's
make
what I
parents
would say,
being
so-
committed.
but
I
think
wish I
about it.
can find that formula.
I actually,
Because it's
I don't
like,
know. Right, there's a tricky formula here, but at the end of the day, if they choose Sylvan, all I need is parents to encourage them, because we
Yes.
provide transportation. They
Yes.
ride the after-school bus,
we do everything.
so I don't need parents to take them anywhere. They come to the school. We provide a snack. They're
provide
part of our
everything.
dinner programs, and so I just really need them to not let their child. I don't really like after 2 sessions. It's not that much fun. Don't let them check out. That's what I really need from mom and dad. I say no. You signed up. You're going to do the 30 sessions. That's if you ask me what I need a commitment to don't let
That's a
them.
great
Don't take the
idea.
easy
Yeah,
way out.
because we want them to compromise, and that's where our challenges come.
Yeah.
Because we are really providing a lot.
Could we do like they do in the summer? You know how they, I don't know if it's doing, but we did the whole session. They went to bikes or can we like partner with someone and ask them about
Incentives.
Incentives.
incentives?
That's a neat idea.
That's a good
That's a
idea.
very
Rick.
good idea. Okay.
That's a good idea.
It wasn't on. Oh, okay. Like it wasn't on. That's fine, we'll check.
Uh-huh.
Maybe something tangible.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's a good
That's
idea.
very good idea.
That is something that we can approach Mr. Pacheco, and maybe he can help us on that.
Yeah,
Why
that's what
not?
I was thinking. If
That's a great
that will
idea.
be a good
Thanks.
encouragement. Yeah. Right.
No, that's a great idea.
Well, I think what you do is maybe for each school get something and then put them in for a drawing. You completed all 30 sessions, or you completed 25 or more, you get in for a drawing. Somebody gets selected. If you did that each session, that could be motivational.
You know,
that'd be nice.
that's a great recommendation.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, STEM education.
no.
Oh, sorry.
She has another question.
Just to make sure I understood correctly, so regardless if a parent chooses Carnegie or Sylvan, if it's a special student receiving special education service, the ratio is 1-to-1.
Only on Carnegie. On
Only on
Sylvan, we're staying on 3-to-1.
Okay. Okay, and then my last question would be, kids that have specific, and I'm talking about specific learning, like dyslexia, are these individuals being trained, to deal with?
For those ones, that's what we're recommending, strictly Carnegie. They have very specialized people.
Okay, thank you.
Because remember, this is a very national thing. Since this is online, yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, so, so there's the placement exam done. So if, as a parent, if I decide, well, I want Sylvan, but then the placement really says, you know what, you are a better candidate for Carnegie instead of Sylvan, no, it's whatever the parent.
No, it doesn't work like these completely different companies. They're not even communicating with each other.
So the
So
placement
it's
is
like you say, I
individual.
want my kid to have tutoring in person. Then the evaluation is going to be to
So
Sylvan.
you
If you want to see your kid has to be the online tutoring, then the evaluation is going to be online, and it's a different evaluation.
Rosie, can
They
I
have
also?
different systems.
I also want to add to the board. So the placement test isn't just for students who are falling behind; it's also acceleration. So students, wherever they place, to Rosie's point, wherever they are, it'll move them from that point. And one of the things that's guaranteed by these organizations is that they will move, because this is the reason we're going to be looking at the data and looking at scores and things like that. And to Rosie's point, this student went to 30 sessions. Did it show an impact academically? This one went to tutoring, but he went 5. And so those are data pieces that we're gonna look at as a district to make sure that this is something that can be sustained. But I just wanted to throw that out there. So even if your child is advanced in AP coursework or whatever, wherever they are, it'll tutor up, right? Is what I should say.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and let me tell you something that we're seeing. We're seeing some parents that are saying that the kids don't need tutoring because they're okay, and those are the ones bringing the kids to tutoring because they want to do better,
well, and I think it comes back.
and that is great.
Those of us that have
Right.
had maybe an experience even in high school, or higher ed, I'm going to suggest that as a high school student leaving high school, I thought tutoring was for people that are behind. When I got to college, what I learned was the best students go to tutoring. because they never want to get behind. That's how they stay so far ahead. They're always honing their skills. And that's how they just stretch way out there. So we've got to work to maybe change the mindset and help everybody understand that it's not that you're behind. It's not a punishment to be in tutoring. It's a way to get even further ahead.
Exactly.
That is the positive
Yeah.
way to get the message out to the parents. Is not the fact that they're falling behind, it's the fact that we want them to keep moving forward. I agree.
Good, excellent. Okay.
And now that you were talking about the prices, when you see on the page, on the website, there's going to be a page dedicated only to tutoring. And it's already there, right, Guillermo? Let me ask you. The page, what Elisa created for tutoring is already on the website, right? Yes. So maybe we can see it, because you can see some of the celebrations when the kid finished tutoring this semester. The celebrations are there. Because they really celebrate in person. The kids finished tutoring. They made a pizza party and everything, and Sylvan did everything for the kids. It was really nice.
And I apologize if you have already answered this question, but
No, yeah.
is there progress monitoring involved? And then how is that? I mean, obviously, the
Yes.
teacher that's teaching, the tutor is getting that information. And that information is being also communicated to the homeroom teacher and parents.
That's why it's going to be next week. It's going to be communicated first to principals, and it's going to be by classroom, by kid, by everything. And now, when the teachers come back, then the principals can share that information. The principals share with the teachers, so principals are receiving it next week. We're going to have it, and we're keeping all this data. We're really tracking all the kids at that district level. And it's still a work in progress. Once we have kind of like the progress put it on one of these board meetings, you will see it. We're not there yet. We're working on that next week.
And you know, just a suggestion. You know what I'm also like curious is, because as a teacher, when you're learning practice, like say I'm one of the tutors for Gadsden and I'm being trained by Sylvan, you end up using what you're learning in the regular classroom.
Yes.
So I would love to see data of comparing the tutor teachers and having that. You know what I understand what I'm saying is
Data on those teachers?
yes, because I have no doubt they'll probably start implementing practices in their classrooms and within the school day, and I think we're going to see an impact. Which
That's a
then,
great idea.
therefore, brings me
Okay.
to the last thing: is we need to continue working with all of our teachers in the MLSS Layer 1 for effective instructional practices, so that one day, you know, we don't have to have intervention. But yes, tutoring is about getting better, so it's not just about
Yeah.
you know the ones that are
That's a
behind.
great idea. Very good. Thank you.
All right. Good. Obviously, tutoring is pretty important. We might all keep that in mind, right? STEM education. Now, we know that as we're moving through these middle schools, we're looking at a sixth grade STEM academy, and that's well in the plan, and Ms. Hernandez is working it. And so we're really moving in that direction. You also probably are aware that our Jumpstart program is wrapped around STEM. And Maria with NMSU has done a lot of that. Jump in there, Rosie.
Jump
It's
in again.
okay. You got a ton of information. That's
So,
why you're here.
Yeah, I know. When it comes to STEM information, something that is important for you to know, we are going to be hiring another instructional specialist in technology. But under Mr. Paliu, he is like, he's an instructional specialist, and he used to be in El Paso district. He was kind of in charge of all robotics and everything. Last semester, we were able to buy robotic equipment from Legos and the whole program for all the elementaries. And then we spend a lot of money on middle and high schools. We buy everything when it comes to drones and robotics and everything. So right now he already designed the program, so we're gonna start this year they working on a certification on students to be able to handle a drone, or I don't know what it's that they need for the drones, license or whatever. So we go in that directions, but we have them. They're in stock already. We have drones for middle schools, a special program designed just for middle schools on STEM, very intense, and another one for the high schools. And Mr. Paliu and our new specialists are going to be on there, and we already have everything.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Rosie. So our sixth grade group is going to start, as we transition into the new middle schools, we've partnered with Project Lead the Way. And so we are getting some STEM and science pieces in there, and Jean will be supporting that piece. So the drones and all those pieces will be part of like their school day. It's part of, we're gonna have an after school club and things like that. But a lot of these pieces are gonna be done during the school day so that all our kids get these opportunities. And so it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be interesting and fun because we're really trying to be innovative in that aspect and keeping the kids, you know, our absentee piece is a big piece, and I think providing opportunities in a curriculum that wants them in school and is relevant to what's happening today. So I'm excited about that. It'll be fun.
If you have the time just to go to one of the elementaries and see the robotics materials from Legos, it's like you wanna play. It's like really exciting. All the things that we bought for the school, like really exciting.
So, also, I know this has been a little bit of a conversation, and maybe I might even suggest a little bit of a struggle at times. Is one school might do one type of a challenge and one do another. What now we're headed toward is everybody's going to do the Lego challenges, all elementary. So
And I think that conversation stemmed from that because we have some principals or some teachers that are a little more innovative. So at district level, we thought, let's have our specialists start guiding. We'll guide it from district office, right? So that we're able to allow programs in every campus. Now the challenge is having students participate, right? Especially in after school programs and things like that. And so that's something we do want to do, is align from the top down in that kind of participation and equity in regards to everybody having that piece. It may not look the same, but at least everybody will have that opportunity. So I think that's like the Lego challenge is something that 2 schools did in the district when we have, 14 elementaries.
Yeah, and
things like
we
that.
did that through Title IV. And one of the things that we were approved on Title IV for this year is like if the kids need to travel and compete on everything with Lego competitions and everything like that, everything's gonna be covered for the kids on travel. If we have to go into competitions, if we can do things, so everything has been like approved by Title IV.
So what and I hope that a little bit just reflects what Rosie from a federal programs perspective has to do is she gets these budgets and she works with right and then you got to tie these ideas with the budget and then make sure they're allowable. And in the past it's been really difficult to pay for student travel out of federal programs. It's been just a nightmare. Well, Rosie's worked really hard and I think got PED to understand here's the benefit of this. And so, you get a little bit of a feel. Now, earlier I wanted to make sure that you might hear back from some teachers who say, I don't want to do Lego. And so I would just encourage you to be prepared for, well, okay, we've tried this and some kids are getting a much better experience than others. We need all our kids to get opportunities. And so encourage them to embrace it. Try. Let's just see, to Ms. Hernandez's point, there's always going to be a little bit of difference because the way I might be given a project and I'm going to approach it as a teacher this way, she's going to approach it this way. One might be more popular than the other, but at least the foundation and the access is available. And that's what I think we've been wrestling with for several years is trying to get that access to more and more kiddos.
Mr. Dempsey, when you say challenge, you're talking about the First League Lego Challenge, correct? Okay,
Oh,
just the
yeah,
different
there-
competitions that
there's
kids
all
can,
kinds
and then
of
it involves
Lego
There's
travel.
so many
Thank
kinds
you.
of Lego things.
And that's
it's
what
like,
this gentleman brings to us, an experience that he rolled out in El
Yeah,
Paso
no,
ISD
he's
that-
even gonna bring, when we pay for all this material and everything, I know I already paid for something that somebody's gonna come from Lego place, Legoland, or I don't know where, kind of train people or something. So there's gonna be more like serious training for the teachers on these things. So we're gonna have, all that is,
And
or Legoland or whatever,
I was gonna say I really appreciate it because I consider my family a Lego family, and that's gonna hit interests like my son who's gonna graduate. You're hitting a whole different population of interest, and it's exciting because it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for SPED education. We know SPEDs, right? We got it. And our audit, we're working on the PO. I already have a group identified. They're a really strong group. And once we'll probably get started early in the next 2 weeks. And they'll start with like a document review, like finance review, and then they're going to start interviews and they're going to go through a process and then they'll provide us a summary report and then we'll review that with you and start talking about what changes might or might not come our way. Okay, but part of it, I know one concern that has been brought to me is ensuring that our students, you know, want to get granular here, are our students receiving the services that IEP says they should receive? I think that's it seems very simple, and it seems like we want to answer yes, but I don't know that any of us here have a system or know of a system that says I can confirm it, and we need to fix that. We need to work on that. We need to make that happen. And then and this is where maybe the board needs to be a little bit thoughtful or prepared. I'm not saying it'll happen overnight, but I do probably anticipate some changes in current roles. And some of those individuals may not want to change what they're doing because they like what they're doing. And this audit may say, well, Mr. Dempsey, you guys have all these people doing this. We think if you move these 2 people here, they would make a better impact for kids. And so likely I'm going to move those 2 people, and then they're going to come to you and say, I don't want to move. And at the end of the day, I think the conversation is, I'll hear you out. We can have a conversation, but it's about the kids' needs. It's not about adult needs. It's about kids' needs.
So so you said an audit within the next 2 weeks?
It'll start in the next 2 weeks. It'll
it will
take several
start.
weeks to complete.
It will start.
It will start
Okay.
in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, but I haven't processed the PO, so I've asked people to start gathering documentation, but they want the document. They've been calling me, and I'm like, you're not getting it until I get a PO in place.
Okay.
Just because
And then does that include student IEPs? That includes all that?
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good.
Budget, how their budget's managed, IEPs, service levels, salaries, documentation, social work, Medicaid billing, and I can tell you right now, there's going to be some findings there. We already know it. Social workers have not been doing their documentation, so we can't bill all their services.
Another piece we're also discussing, we discussed this as an academic team yesterday, is the students who are bilingual in special ed. So we're going to identify that dual what do you call it, identification piece in order to determine when the services are being offered, if we are touching on that bilingual piece, because you know we have a whole other audit going through the EL piece, but yesterday that was a big red flag for us as we looked through school designations and student data, that who's double identified and are we serving that group, and how are we serving that group. So
What I might suggest, if I were a board member and didn't have a background in education, here's what I might want to make sure I understand. We want to be is it possible for a child to be an EL and have a disability? Yes. It's also possible that we're misidentifying a child who's an EL and giving them an IEP. That's a big red flag. And we got to be thoughtful and make sure that we are careful there in that space.
One of the things that I saw was several students having the same goals written on the IEPs, and that was a big concern. And some IEPs not being updated since elementary, middle school, and they were about to graduate. So it was the same goal over and over and over again for the last 6-7 years. So is that something that they can be able to? I mean, I was able to identify that, and
actually that's something that we're identifying as a team, because
Okay,
even
good.
the way we're writing the goals is not the correct,
Yeah.
as I look at some of the goals and as we work with different people, we're talking about bringing in consultants and things like that to look at them. But to your point, for a long time that has been a practice where myself as a principal, they were just copying and pasting pieces, and so that's something that special ed department is working on, because we have caught those pieces. But they will review those pieces, and I'm sure we'll have some training for teachers on those areas.
So on goals, on IEPs, because I have a child who has an IEP, and so what I did notice is and I don't know what the program is called that you use for the IEPs, but where you go and they can copy and paste the goal. I don't like that, because you're not basing your IEP on my son's present levels of performance or their data, and then how are we educating parents? Because I'm going to say I have the advantage of being an educator. What about my fellow parents who are not educators. I mean, they don't know what they don't know, and I think we need to make an initiative that we educate our parents, because that way they know, and they're doing us a favor to make sure that protocol is being followed, so that we don't face a lawsuit down the line or findings on audits. And then the other thing is, what's important to me too is, working and hiring special education teachers, because I'm very curious how many of our special education teachers have that bilingual certification, because we do serve an overwhelming population of English language learners, and sometimes we don't have, how are we getting around that?
Right, and that's one of the pieces that we've been discussing, and it's interesting that you said that, because we just had our Principals Academy, and one of the things that's come out of it is that we need a Teachers Academy and we need another Parent Academy. Those of you who attended the one for bilingual, the Parent Institute, so we're actually discussing this piece to start doing the Parent Institute for, like, to your point, programs, bilingual, special ed. Our goal is, before the IEP, that in that parent interview, when you're supposed to call the parent before the IEP to get that information from the parent, that we're discussing these pieces. And to your point, one of the things that, and I can't remember what we were talking about, but in regards to the goals, we're seeing things like student will read at a second grade level. And for us, it should be more specific to the student will develop a 3-paragraph essay. You know what I'm saying? And so we are looking at that, Ms. Flores, and this audit will hopefully help. They're also going to look at the platform. And in talking to our SPED director, we're talking about, do we revamp our TINET? But it has to be more individualized, right? Because we're seeing the same with accommodations. We're giving everybody the same accommodation because it's easy, right? Here's this is what I'm giving everybody. When we're not looking at individual students, how many years have you been here? Where are you? Are you in ASC? Are you in resource? Is it just math? Is it just reading? Are you double? Are you gifted and special ed in regards to some, because we have that. We have, double. So yes, we are working as a district, and to everybody's point, it's a process, because there's a lot that needs to be done. And so one of the goals is to provide a parent institute, not just for that, but for federal programs pieces too, and just everything, right? There's a lot of information. In doing this little Principals Academy we had a 3-day academy, and they have so much. So if the teachers have so much, in all these areas, all those areas impact parents, right? And so we are thinking of doing something like that.
Ms. Arenas, you mentioned about the students that are twice exceptional, which is the special education and gifted. What about, I hope that during this review, it's not just focused on special needs, but also the gifted, because it does fall under the same umbrella, right? And so there's many things that need to be addressed that are happening, when even parents just receiving the prior written notice. Is it being done on a timely manner, or is it being done, the day before, and where parents many times possibly don't, they can't show up because they're working. So looking at all those little details on both ends, not special needs, but looking on the other side of the spectrum.
Yes, and actually that's one of the focus areas pieces, because as you're aware, we've had 2 corrective action plans in our district in the last year, which we hadn't had in years, 15 years or something like that. And so that's one of the focus areas in regards to timelines, and who's offering the services and when we're documenting, because we're also finding that we're offering a service, but then we're not documenting till later. And so there's there's a lot of glitches in our system that we will, we're going to look and correct them. We're going to move forward. But yes.
No, I agree. Again, seems like SPED's pretty important, right? And I'll just, throw that out there. English learners, we know there's a conversation. We're going to serve, we're always in Gadsden going to serve a significant EL population. We have to be poised to be able to do that. That talks about recruitment, that talks about retention of particular staff, it talks about endorsements, talks about program. And, Ms. Arizona is working really hard to help us understand what service programs look like and what that quality should be, and what where we're currently at and how do we move forward. And she's already made some changes, and I see more and more. I still maybe want the board to consider an idea, and we're you know, still years away from this probably, but I wonder, you guys know I like pilots, I like small projects that I can control factors on, and I think we might have a setup, and I'd like, you know, definitely hear some feedback on it. If you think about after the consolidation of Southern Park, we have Desert View and we have Riverside, proximity, very close to each other. It would be an interesting project to designate one of those a dual language school and the other one just a transitional school, which typically we already have them. Riverside is dual language. Desert View is transition. But here's the difference. When I say designate, we know these what drives up the cost of a dual language school is non-participant classrooms. We have, every dual language school has classrooms if families said, nah, it's not working, I'm a non-participant. So I have to staff that classroom with a person, with a teacher. That's what continues to drive the cost of this. So the difference here would be no non-participant classrooms. If you're not in if you choose dual language, you go to Riverside. If you choose transition, you go to Desert View. There's no non-participant classroom that exist. I would be very interested to see what that would look like, because then you could really specialize the dual language programs, and then over time truly compare the data and say, same kids from very similar communities, right? And walk through those pieces and ask yourself, which one's doing better? So I just want you to think about that. That's, you know, we're not ready for that. It would take years to prepare for it, but I pitch that to you in that we have maybe a possibility of doing it.
Okay. I'm gonna say I'm gonna be open to the idea, possibly, not fully in, but I would ask that, you know, the current dual language schools that we are providing resources, PD, because yeah, the research shows that it works. But as a former GISD employee, you know, when I used to do dual language, you know, it comes down to resources, PD. We also have to make sure that we're providing that so that we can really say it's working or not working. So I just would ask that. And then the other thing that I would ask is, how are we as a district working? And you're not going to like what I hear you're going to say, but I'm like, goodness gracious, we've got to stop the self-sabotage against dual language in our own district.
Ms. Flores, I think you nail it, right? Is how do I, the reason why I think a magnet project could be, because you can get the adults out of the system that self-sabotage it. It took me 4 years to figure out, like, how is this? It's within. We're losing kids and families from within. So see, then you staff it. If you're the dual language school, you're in 100%. And if there's any chance you're going to sabotage this thing, you're not there. You're at another school. Because you have a true model of every adult in this school believes in dual language. The problem right now is we have no tool to verify that, right? And it's easy to check out. And so, very valid points. I think it's something to think about. It would take a few years to build us to this space, but I think it's something we should continue to think about.
You mentioned about the parent academy. I think that that would be something to also incorporate, because many times the parents aren't acquainted, and so whatever they're being told at the school, you know, your child is getting confused. So we need to keep them just in the English class. So as a parent, you know, I hear this from an educator, you're thinking, yes, that's what I'll do, right? And so it's not necessarily that they're sabotaging it. It's the fact that the parent, there's not awareness, there's not, you know, what is the correct thing to do. So also having those academies, or having that parent academy, I think incorporating that information, letting them know, hey, this is what it looks like. And yes, your child might struggle the first few years, you know, whatever the statistics are, and showing them that way. It's up to the parent, and not necessarily what the administration or the teacher, whoever else is telling them, hey, this is what you should do, which I think is sometimes what is happening.
Out of curiosity, Mr. Dempsey, you mentioned that down Riverside and Desert View. Do we have any numbers saying how many dual students we have to compare to any English learning only from both those schools?
So when Sunland Park, when we designated and they were provided the opportunity if they wanted dual language to Sunland Park, I believe only 4 students opted for the dual language. But I think a lot of it might be because Sunland Park is a transitional school, right? And so that, to your point, where, we do, I remember this because I was a principal in a dual language school where, well, they told me they're confused, but if you educate a parent in regards to, it's not confusion, it's just language registers are trying to find the spot in the brain. And, so it's about educating the language acquisition piece to people, because that way as a parent you know that, okay, my 3rd grader is not performing like everybody else right now, but in 5th and 6th grade I'll see the difference, right? And so I do agree that, so we do have that data. I didn't bring that with me, like, dual I know Riverside, for example, is a very solid dual language school, which they may have 2 classes that are dual language, and then they have the non-participant class. So she's very pro the dual language piece, and so she has a very strong program. But there are campuses that have more non-participants and just the dual language strand. So we end up self-contained classrooms. And to your point, because we are really limited in bilingual endorsed teachers right now, I know that one campus told me that with her teachers resigning or retiring, now they don't have any TESOL endorsed, maybe 1 or 2. So it's very interesting to see that piece, and because we have so many new teachers coming in, ACP, having the bilingual endorsement coursework is not something feasible because they don't even have the methods or the pedagogical practices for education at all, right? And so that's a struggle, I think, as a state we're facing. I don't know how Las Cruces Public Schools do, and I don't think they have the same amount of ELs we do. But that's something we're finding, is that there's a lack of bilingual, and there's bilingual endorsed teachers who don't want to be in a bilingual classroom. So if you force them into a Spanish component, they request a transfer to a transitional school, or they just flat out leave us. And so those are those pieces.
And think about what we talked about earlier. ACP, we talk about TESOL and dual language endorsements. They need to work on their credential, if you will, and structured literacy letters. So it's a lot. We're asking new teachers to do a lot. And we're worried about this as a group, that we're going to have a high turnover if we don't find a way to help them, but take a few things off their plate a little bit early.
Now, I will add that this year, with Ms. Tarazona and Rosie collaborating under federal programs, we are paying for TESOL. We are reimbursing. We don't pay for them. We reimburse for TESOL endorsements and bilingual endorsements, correct? Yes. So we do have like 2 cohorts going. We're trying to grow them. So the teachers who want to are taking the coursework, and then we're paying for it. So yes.
Yeah.
Is
The
there?
thing is,
oh,
I was gonna repeat, but we're doing that with ARP, so this will be the last year that we can do that.
so we need teachers to take advantage of this.
so
That's what we
yeah,
need.
Ms. Tarazona has a plan of recruiting a lot of teachers this year, so to send them to do their TESOL and everything bilingual, and she's gonna be very assertive on that.
Yes, she is very good at that. So I guess my next question: does a bilingual teacher, working in a dual language school, do they get a stipend or an incentive, for being that?
And I would ask us to, I've been saying this over and over and over again, and I will continue till the day comes that it's fulfilled. We need to increase those bilingual stipends. And I already told you our neighboring district has increased it, and I've asked, and I think it comes, I'm going to say, does it come down to a local decision? And if it does, I would ask us, the board, to, or whoever needs to consider that,
So-
because we will be losing teachers.
So let me tell you, that is something that with the bilingual and TESOL stipends, we have been sharing between operational and Title II, and it's something that I agree we need to consider. I think what we're doing, we're going to be losing our bilingual teachers because Las Cruces went to $5,000 stipend, and we are keeping the stipend that we had 15 years ago.
If you don't mind, what is their stipend? Yes, we definitely have to do that.
TESOL is what?
1,000.
And bilingual is 1,500. So, here, what I would say, and just as I'm truly think I'm in the superintendent's chair. We have had this conversation, but when we have this conversation, it always seems to be outside the budget cycle. So we've got to get it in the right timing, and now is the right timing, okay? Because then Ludim can start and work with Rosie to say, okay, if we did that, what's the dollar amount going to take? Where could I take that from? Because likely it's going to have to be shared, right? And start working towards it. Because if you were to say right now, today, make a change to the operational budget, you can't do that. The operational budget was already approved. So we've got it. Now we're looking at how do we make that. Now, federal programs, at times, we can change applications. That's not an easy task, but it's a possible task. For an operational side, that's tough. But it's about timing, and right now is the perfect time for this to be out there.
So with that being said, since it's the perfect timing, do we need to have a board meeting to approve this, or are we agreeing, or what's the next step, because it's the perfect time?
It's the perfect time because Ludim gets to hear it, because Ludim will start building the budget in November for the following year. And so she starts, we put the numbers together. What would it cost? How could I do this? What possibilities? What does Rosie have available? How do we make that happen? So it's really not a board. It very much could be a board priority, but the work is done over here between these two ladies.
So then, yes, we definitely need to keep our bilingual teachers, so give them something, just the way we were able to come up with $7,000 for all our teachers and every employee this way. I think that's, and then we constantly mention it, in regards to becoming a dual language. I think we should push the button and try to get as close as we can to even up, so that way these teachers, bilingual teachers, can, go and do their job.
And I agree with everything said there. I can get behind it. The one thought that I have heard it at different times, and maybe I misinterpreted, so if you guys think I misinterpreted, somebody correct me. But I have felt a push to say dual language everywhere. You can't afford it. Whether you buy that or not, Ludim, you can't afford it. You'll break the bank and you won't be able to afford it.
I was gonna say, and I don't want to break the bank, but I respect your opinion. I would ask for us to look at, because I'm going to say, people watching me, I am a proponent for dual language district-wide. However, I would love to see request or ask, can we look at districts that actually have dual language district-wide and see how they are doing it? Because, if we have an open mindset, anything is possible. But yes, we've got to have the resources, the money, but I'm just curious, how do other districts
Do we
it?
know of any district that is full dual language? Do you know anybody, Miss? I'm just wondering, Miss. I don't know.
Mr. Hernandez, and I think that also, we need to spend time investigating that and hopefully finding that model district, because it cannot be a sticker on the door. It cannot be just a statement on a website, dual language. No, it's got to be quality dual language. It's got to be the depth, right? And, Thomas and Collier, when they came in, what did they tell me? You need to find students that are English-only kiddos, signed up in your dual language schools, and tell me how their Spanish is. That's the true key. That's the true measure of success, is our Spanish is just as high as our English. Really those are the type of things we got to work in.
Yeah, Ms. Flores, I don't think I understood the full picture until I came into human resources. It truly is a staffing cost issue, because first of all, it's not something you can force on families. So you'll always have families who have beliefs. I mean, just like political beliefs, you'll always have families who don't want to participate. And funding those families costs the same as funding a dual language. So when you really break down what it is those families that don't want to participate, there could be 5, but you have to provide a full teacher for only those 5. And so if you're doing that at every grade, right, trying to avoid multi-grade classrooms, that's where the funding. So the real issue is, how do you get parents to buy in 100%, and is that a possibility?
I don't want people to. I'm looking at the camera because hopefully there's people out there watching. I don't want. I am not saying that I want to force every single child to be a participant. I just want, for it to be the upper. But like I said, I have an open mind to the possibility of a magnet school. But I agree 100% with you that it's got to be quality, because I want Gadsden to be the example in the nation, in the state of New Mexico one day.
Ms. Flores, what I've always felt from you, and I just feel like it's important for me to say it, I've always felt you've wanted the opportunity for a child to take. But what I don't know that we've really had the understanding is financially what's realistic and what's not. And I think the possibility of magnets could be the pathway to what we'd like to have, the option and the opportunity, but it's a harder line that says if you're out, okay, so let's just say my child starts in kindergarten, dual language, we get to 3rd or 4th grade, where what's the saying in about 4th grade is when we stop learning to read and we start reading to learn. That's about 4th grade when that transition occurs. It gets a little harder, and all those A's become B's and C's, maybe lower on that report card. And mom and dad say, oh, I'm going to check them out. Right now, they check them out to another classroom. At that point, no, you check them out to another school. And that's a hard line. It's a hard line. But I think if we truly say dual language is the answer, we need to prove it. And I think we will. I think Gadsden will prove it. But it's a harder line.
And I agree 100%. And I just find it very interesting that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you look at the bilingual literacies, the community of Santa Teresa High School has the greatest, but yet, certain areas don't want it. And I'm thinking that is insane, because it doesn't make sense to me, because there's the population of kiddos getting that is greater than even in my own community of Chaparran. And I'm thinking it's just like, all I ask is for all kids to have the opportunity, if they choose to, and families, but also to educate the public of the beauty, even our own Hispanic race, is that, to stop that thinking of English only, that it is beautiful to embrace your 2 languages, and hopefully one day that there be 3, 4 languages. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah. No, it's great conversation. Great conversation. So, human resources. Oh, jump in there. No, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I'm keeping notes. So. You guys are helping me because it's helping as well.
No, I
se duerme.
Hello? Would you like?
Five, but two of them are. But this is how it always is for, you know, congruent, live, later on. Derek can also see how many are viewing after. Oh, it tracks it down too. So you get more viewers, and I think especially when the word gets out, you're talking about real estate. You'll get more viewers.
Is the screen timed out too?
They're looking at it.
Man, I was chewing my gum. I was enjoying it.
Yeah. And somebody's.
Okay, I'll jump back in just time-wise. Like I said, Estrella will have some HR. Oh, yeah. Right.
Okay, ready?
Okay, Mr. Kano.
Okay,
Are we back on, Mr. Carmona? Okay,
You're not fired then.
okay.
so, as we were speaking earlier, so is there, I mean, granted, Ludin and Ms. Rosa has to get together, to try to make a stipend for other teachers that are interested in getting into the bilingual courses. So I guess to make it maybe a little bit simpler, maybe a little bit easier, let's award the ones that are right now that are certified to do bilingual. Is that applicable?
I think here's an important, and thank you for saying that. Let's understand a few things. So let me make sure I understand your question. Right now, as we sit, teachers in specific courses receive a bilingual stipend. Just having a bilingual endorsement does not get you a bilingual stipend. You have to teach in specific courses, okay? And then I think what we need to drill down is how many courses do we have? And if we did, let's just say we matched Las Cruces, what's that going to cost? All right, at the end of the day, we got to figure out where's that money going to come from, okay? And that would be our first step in that. Okay.
Yes, I agree with that. Hopefully we can get some.
Okay, I think we
Feedback
can
on
come
that.
up with that pretty quickly. I don't think that's too difficult. Okay? Okay, we can work on that piece. Okay. HR is going to give you a little report. Legislative priorities. We know that's going to come. It's a short legislative session. Now, interesting enough, and I kind of heard a little in the break, conversation between Mr. Castillo and Ms. Martinez about budget. I'm strongly sensing from LFC is they're going to stay away from school budgets. There's a little attitude, and I'm not going to say it bad because I think Ludim and I might agree here a little bit. We've made enough changes. Leave them alone for a little while. I actually heard that from LFC staff. So that says don't expect big raises. They're not coming. They've already happened. And sometimes teachers and staff get a little upset about that, right? But that gives us time to figure out where are we at in all this and what additional things could we do. So it could be good for a couple of years. So I see that coming. And then, again, we'll go through the process, but we need to try to do this early of what are the board's legislative priorities, and then begin working with our legislators to see what those might look like. Okay? Sure.
With that being said, just a reminder so that we don't wait last minute, which I did last year, is that there's any resolutions for this upcoming, that way we can start writing them up. So October is always a resolution meeting. That way we're ready to go with whatever resolutions we want to present to the NMSBA resolution committee.
And that committee day, Joe Guillen told me is the day after our meeting. What is it, October 7th?
The winter conference?
The regional.
Oh, the Region 7 meeting?
Yes, so
Okay.
the following days. I think he said you are this year. Because you're the president, yeah. He told me that this morning.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, staff recruitment retention. We talked about this. Federal funding. It was mentioned today. Rosie at this next board meeting was going to give you a final report on ESSER 2, so you see how that money was spent. It's gone. It's over. Next year we'll be saying the same thing about ARP. All those extra federal dollars are going away. Good news. We tied none of it to salary. We don't have to change salary schedules. We don't have to go to a union and say, well, we got to rechange this. You're seeing districts very close to us going through all that because they used those dollars and tied them to salary, which is my fear all along. And I'm personally very thankful we didn't go there. I think you're going to get to see a lot of priorities and a lot of things we got to do to serve our community. But staff, think about it. My paycheck was this, and next year you want my paycheck to be less. That's what's going to happen in districts very close to us. Okay? It's happening right now. Staff professional development, we've talked about this. And that could be from EL to SPED to just Marzano, and that's always important, new teacher, right? Today we heard a little bit on a breakout session about social justice and restorative practices. We already have a pilot, but that falls under that SEL and school safety, because Darren helped me today tie some pieces together. Right, is you have a child struggling with something, they get angry. There's 3 results of that, right? And they were pretty bleak, right? If a child gets so to the point that they're going to use a weapon to hurt someone or themselves, or they're locked up for life, it's nothing there is good. How do we get in front of that? And I think these restorative practices are a spot to go. Technology resources, always a conversation. In the last 5 years, we've doubled the amount we have in inventory, so we have to have good funding streams to replace them. And, Mr. Snowdy and Nadim are already working on those and have them pretty well in place, but we just got to be aware of that and how that works. MLSS, that came up. Did you have some? I saw.
Sorry, Mr. Dempsey, just a question. Yes. Regarding the technology resources, not necessarily the resources, but what are the thoughts of what's going to be happening with the equipment or the devices that are in place right now? And I think we have talked about it a little bit, and like the recycling, or how is that working? Or is it just through the selling? What was it called? The surplus?
Yes, right now.
Right. So the majority of our technology has to go through an auction, if you will. And so what we do is we bulk them. They're in lots. And so let's just say every lot has 500 Chromebooks or 1,000. If you bid on that lot, you may want 2 of them in there, but you get all 1,000 of them, right? And that's that process. There is, obviously this is a true concern for recycling technology. There's some harmful things in our laptops and different things, and that e-waste, if you will, is a pretty big business. Mr. Snowdy and Jessica work through different vendors to try to address that component of it. Okay. Okay, MLSS, this is academic services, if you will. We talked about Tier 1. We talked about what we do here. This is also school safety and security, SEL. Those are all wrapped together, and so, that might be a piece we might look at as a priority. New Teacher Academy we talked about. Bonds. This coming year, we have a 2 mil levy coming up for election. The following year, I believe, will be our GO. So those are big components of making sure those pass. At one of the conferences, I don't know if we all sat through it together, there's a couple of us, but Alamogordo was an example of, they passed, I've never heard this before in my career, they passed their GO and failed their SB9. SB9 is what keeps the doors open in physical plant. GO is what does new construction. So what does that mean? And so we just want to make sure Gadsden's always supported our schools, never had a problem there. We just want to be sure we have a plan and we get that out to our voters.
So we have one this November.
SB9 is this November.
SB9.
SB9 election is this November. Okay.
Mr. Dempsey, the GO, will we have Gadsden Middle School complete? Because that would be something that would support, because you're saying it's for building new buildings. The middle school being built will be like your advertising for that.
Think of there's cycles, and we're overlapping GO cycles. So what's going to build Gadsden Middle School and Chaparral Middle School are GOs that have already been passed.
Right.
ST Middle will be a part of this conversation.
And so
and any other expansion.
Yeah, and I guess that would be that would be the best advertising for it, saying if it doesn't pass, ST may, we would still build it, but it may lack something. I don't know.
Well, we need those GOs to keep up. Right.
I'm going to do it.
All right. And I think just one of the things I want to throw out there is when we did do the building of Gadsden Middle School and Chaparral, back in the day, the cost of that construction was very low. So there is going to be a difference to cover. So just keep that in mind as we move forward, because it could be something where there might be additional funds necessary.
Let me give you some feel. As I've been watching that, I think the first numbers and first estimates were about 43 million. With the first numbers about 43. Now they're in the 60s. Today, we're at about 62, 63, 64 million. And that's just been in the planning phase of this thing. You see how construction is just skyrocketing. Yeah. So, parent communication, I think we can always work there. I think that's an important piece. Social media presence. We have a social media director. We know that that's something, and that's something that I will say I've felt something to prioritize. And then a big one, and this falls into some other categories, but chronic absenteeism. That's going to be a conversation, and we've got some numbers here that we're concerned with where those are at, and the state has some problems, but I can't be responsible for the state. I just want to be responsible for Gadsden kiddos and what we can do to improve that. And Rosie has some strategies to that. So whether that becomes a priority or not, Rosie's team's still going to be working on it, but we want it on your mind as well. Yeah. I tell you what, so Estrella, do you want to jump in and do employee services?
Yeah, I forgot my own rule. So what I was saying is, it says human resources because this is a newsletter about what we're doing for employees. But there's never anything that I do out of my department that I don't meet with Mr. Dempsey, Maria, Ludim, Rosie, and vice versa. We're always making things happen together, and I want that to be clear. So I put a little box there of our priorities in human resources, but this is a celebration newsletter. So we have Rethink Care. We're kicking it off in this month, actually. And what it is it's a wellness program for our employees. And it offers online, very similar to Vector, like online tutorials about money, about your own mental health, about depression. And then aside from that, we're going to have one of their professionals come in and do face-to-face once a month. And if that's not a good fit for them, there's also going to be virtual ones that they can log into and watch. And so some of our topics you see there include anxiety, depression, mental wellness, reducing risk of suicide, trauma recovery, and more. And so this is really making sure that our employees are okay. When I've been meeting with this vendor, I tell them, and I hope that nobody misunderstands this, I said, we do PD really well when it comes to teaching, when it comes to curriculum. But we don't know PD well for our staff, right? Like for ourselves. And I'd like this to hit everybody. So when we develop this, please think about our custodians, of our cafeteria workers. How can they benefit from something like this? And so this is kicking off this year. We hope that we get some good participation from our staff, but it's really something for them to better. Right? And it's also a resource for our administration, because we have employees come in all the time saying, I need help, I'm depressed, I need help, I suffer from anxiety. And now this is a resource we can offer them. And then some of the news, this is old and new. So in last school year, we had 181 teachers who were at risk of losing their license. So this meant that because of ACP or because they were level 1 and they hadn't done their dossier, we were at risk of losing them as teachers. So at the beginning of the year, we came up with some criteria for them and said, look, if you do these, we'll help you. We'll help you either to get an extension or we'll help you to get your license. So HR team, especially Lisa Herrera, met with the employees consistently 4 to 5 times a year. And so I'm happy to say that out of those 181, 175 kept their license. So that's actually just 6 that we weren't able to help them get their license.
Amazing.
So that's something we'll continue to do this year. We've been talking about GISD University, and really what we talk about with GISD University is what is our plan for our ACP and our new teachers, right? What does that mentoring look like? What does the PD look like? And so GISD University is helping them to successfully get their teaching license, but it's us rolling it out in a systematic way. So again, this team worked really hard, and we have year 1 of GISD University, and we're bringing them in a week earlier. We're paying them. We're going to try to get some of that work done, so we're not taking them out of the classroom. And then we'll work on year 2 for next year, and we hope that the first 5 years of every new teacher to GISD looks the same. It's supportive, it's practical. That's our goal, and that we have mentors. Oh, so an idea that we have, and I didn't put it on here because I don't know how feasible this is, but one of the things that I'd like to roll out is just a temperature check, right? So after 30 days, our employee has entered to call them and say, how has your the first 30 days gone? What is it that we can do to improve? Do you have access to your email? That sort of thing. The big issue I have is that we have so many different start dates. Like, not everybody starts the first day of school, right? Or the first day. So we have to track, well, this one started this day, what's 30 days from this one started. So that's a big task. But what I have next, I definitely feel we can do this. Every time we have an employee get their first PIN for 5 years, we would like to do a survey to stay and ask them, what in the district has encouraged you to be an employee for 5 years? What is it that we're doing well? So that we know what we can focus on and start promoting a little bit more with our newbies. So that we will be able to roll out. Then NeoGov is our new higher HR platform. And the reason it's so important for you to get comfortable with NeoGov is that it's going to be our time management system. It's going to be our form builder where all forms are filled out. Right now, we just piloted. I don't want to say pilot. We just kicked it off, and you'll see that the hiring platform looks completely different. That's because it's NeoGov. And great things about NeoGov, it is a human resource system, so it's meant for not just public entities but private entities. So automatically when we post a position, it posts it on LinkedIn, it posts it on ZipRecruiter, governmentjobs.com, so it makes us nationally visible and competitive, and I think that's a big plus for recruiting. So on this little side note, what I wanted to share here is we did do a staff survey this year. We did it twice. We did it at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. And of course, I didn't post the negative things. I will share a little bit of that with you, but I wanted to highlight some of the awesome things that was responded. So you'll see 76% responded favorably to job satisfaction. And the question was, are you satisfied with your job? We use Panorama for this, and Panorama can then compare us nationally. So I would like you to know that nationally, the average is in the 40s. It's about 46, 47. At Gadsden, in May, at the end of the year, those that did respond, 76%. So that's outstanding. That's something we need to remember in our heads when that one employee complains, right? Because sometimes that one employee influences us to go, wow, is this a major issue? But 76 job satisfaction, that's pretty high. So 96% of staff find their work meaningful. I thought that was important because it means our people care. They think it has meaning, right? And then the last one, 81% of employees would recommend others to work at GISD. So for me, that's a recruiting source within ourselves, right? Is our own people believe that it's great to work here. I do want to share that our lowest percentage was in feedback from administration. And so I think that that's interesting because it means we want to know more about how we're performing. And maybe we just need to focus and do better on that. But it wasn't job satisfaction, and it wasn't, how they see the district as a whole. And so I thought that was important. One more thing that I want to share with you. These go hand in hand. You'll pass these out too.
Estrella, while you're passing that out, what, like the participation?
I just need one. Mándeme.
Participation on Panorama, has it been increasing, or are you seeing that? Yeah, where's that?
I think it's average to all our participation. It's more than parent participation. It is about 60%. So it is good, but of course it's not 100. It's not in the 80s. But it is better than our parent participation. And we'll continue to do this and promote it and use this and share the information with you in detail. I think this year I kind of just wanted to see what it does tell us and how it goes, but we can definitely use this as a tool. Okay, so you have these go hand in hand. What you have with this list are the vacancies for that require a substitute. So this isn't going to include your vacancies for custodial, for secretarial, this is just the ones that require a substitute, because I think our priority should be how many students are starting school without a teacher, right? So when we look at this little sheet gives you sort of the numbers, okay? So here we have 31 posted. 6 additional include this because we have 6 employees on FMLA. So that doesn't mean that they're gone. It just means that they're not going to start because they're on family medical leave, okay? So 37 total substitutes will be starting the school year. And of course, this data is of 7/13, okay? It could go up, it could go down. But 37 substitutes will start on the first day of school. Out of those 37 positions, 16 are sped. So the majority of our vacancies and what it tells me where we need to focus on recruitment is sped. Out of those 37, 17 are secondary, 14 are in elementary. That's pretty split. That means that, half and half, right? Again, 6 are on family medical leave. 8 of these positions are instructional assistants because they're in a sped classroom assisting. So we also need to work on recruiting our IAs. I really think that 7 of these will close before. They're very marketable positions, like 6th grade English teacher, a 1st grade English teacher. So 7 of those I guarantee will not be there at the beginning of the year because those are easy to fill.
You don't have recommendations now?
Yeah. So what does that mean? That my prediction is that we'll start 22 classrooms will start without a teacher this year. And when I first got that number, I was like, God, that's a lot. But in comparison to the 862 teachers that we have, it's actually only 2.5% of our teaching staff. So when you look around to our neighboring districts, I believe I read that Albuquerque Public Schools has 800 substitutes starting on the first day, 800 teacher vacancies. So, put that in perspective, 2.5 is a great percentage. I think we're doing really well. But really, what this tells me, what stands out to me, is that we need to work on recruiting for our sped classrooms. Any questions?
Do we have but you do have substitutes for those classes right now?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then we're not gonna be
No.
Okay.
And all these are starting with long-term subs.
Okay,
so it's
good.
going to be a sub that's consistent in there 5 days a week.
awesome. Okay.
Can you repeat one more time, possible classes without a teacher?
Yes.
Is that what?
That's the prediction of how many classrooms will start on the first day of school without a teacher.
Okay.
So that's the number you're looking at. Anything else?
Just a question on the substitutes. Do you still continue to hire? And is there like a specific time or they can?
We're hiring throughout the year. Sometimes we do freeze the windows because we have an area that's inundated. Like I'll tell you, our southern area is always inundated with substitutes. So there's not enough jobs in that area for the amount of substitutes. But then like in our northern area, that's a dire need area where we don't have enough substitutes to fill the vacancies. So that window is open year round because if we have a substitute that applies, we want them to focus and to sub in the area that we need them. Does that make sense? We also had substitute orientations this summer. We invited them to come in, and I myself and Abby were part of the orientation. We kind of went over the do's and the don'ts, the expectations, where they could go for help. And they were very successful. I mean, we had about over 100 attend in each session. So I when we say that we have 400 in the system, I will say I think we have 300 active.
Question: how come you don't make it mandatory? And
we can't because we don't pay them.
Oh, and there's no way that we can afford to pay them like half the day or something like that. Because when I was a substitute in Canutillo, it was mandatory if you wanted to come back and The first year we got paid half the day, but then the second year we didn't get paid, but it was a requirement if you wanted to come back as a substitute. If not, you had to go through all the process all over again.
Yeah, we can't require their time unless we compensate them. And again, it's just where this lies in our priorities, right? And funding, because if we prioritize everything, we can't fund anything. But yeah, that's what it would take for us to make it mandatory. Okay, thank you.
I while Esther was presenting, I was able to loop back on a few things. This is the tutoring page. Rosie, you want to jump in there? Sure.
So that's everything for parents. So if you can like, if you want to click on any of the schools, so they see the parents go directly to their schools and they can see the link is there. See? The tutorial and everything, so they can start responding and everything. And Miss Lisa completed it first of all, so she will respond to the question because everything all information is there. It's good. And then if you want to continue scrolling down,
I have to share again. I did something wrong. Yeah. Let me get back to that.
I wanted to add, I didn't share this picture on the bottom is our actual human resource staff, okay? It's not yeah, they're not it's not a Google Doc, a Google picture. How come they're not there?
You guys have mics right?
Yeah, we're
Okay, yeah,
taking
and
a
then
picture.
you wanna scroll down a little bit more. So it's kind of like very friendly for parents. It's like, you see, acceleration and enrichment. In literacy, in math, and if you keep scrolling down, you're gonna see the celebrations, and it's like what we have. Everything is English and Spanish for the parents. Aceleración y enriquecimiento. So we're trying to deliver that message, and those are the celebrations for some of the classrooms that finished already. So we can see some of the celebrations on the kids. They did receive some prizes and everything, as you can see, for tutoring when they were done with the tutoring. So it was really nice. So there's some of the pictures there and everything. So it's kind of like a very friendly, nice page. Miss Cumplido did a fantastic job with that. And it's like, and we made it very easy for parents. You just need to go into their school and they fill out the form and they receive the phone call immediately.
Okay.
Yes.
I think if you don't have any questions, Ms. Hernandez, you want to jump in?
Okay, I just want to touch base on this piece first, and any questions you all might have. So as you're aware, school designations have been released for the 21-22 school year. I think it's important to know that it's that year. The designations for schools were taken from the data for 2016, 17, 18, and 19. The problem with that is that 3 of those years are Park and 1 of them is Camelot. Okay, so the other piece, I'm just preempting some of these pieces, is that the PED is saying that in August they will release the data for last school year. So we may have schools in designation again or out of designation. It just depends, right? We kind of know where we're at just because we have the data for the NMSSA for this year. The issue with the designations for 21 and 22 is that schools were given points, but the PED has not told us where the points were allotted. So you might have a school that is, on the top tier, but did all their points come from what? In the elementaries, it's easier. Mr. Vincent, can you go down just a little, please, so I can kind of explain this piece? Right there is what I need. So as you can see, elementary points total 90% on math proficiency, reading proficiency, math improvement. High schools only have 55 in the academic piece. A graduation has more points on the bottom, if you notice, right? So we have schools and designations. For example, if a school we don't know where the points were allotted. Does that make sense? So we talked to the principals. We have 5 schools and designations. We have the 3 middle schools are designated ATSI, which means additional support schools. Our plan as a district is to support through having the specialists. We have to look at the data, but we don't know which groups, again, did what. Is it the resource piece? Is it those students in inclusion? Is it, we don't know the exact, we can't pinpoint, but we do know that all we have to do is make sure that we're moving into the growth model and do better than what the scores are saying for this year. Gadsden Middle School did not meet. Their designation is for both the special education group and the EL group. Now, with Ms. Tarazona on board, we have found some scheduling discrepancies for the EL group, so we have already adjusted those for this school year, especially the English language development piece in the high schools and middle schools. We were doing like some extra hours. There's some pieces that were missing for these students, so we're going to go ahead and do that. The other piece that's huge for us is we have the official EL group that we count, but there's 3,000 ELs out of program that could be receiving some of these services as well. And so we've identified those as well, and then we'll start identifying the ELs and special ed group in those campuses. Chaparral Middle was special ed, Gadsden Middle special ed and ELs, and then Santa Teresa Middle School was special education. And so one of the things we're looking at is not so much the middle schools, but all the feeder elementaries coming up to them, because remember, they all come up to that group. We find that 6th grade group is, again, I think as a district, one of the best decisions we've made is moving that 6th grade group into the middle schools, because it is the band that the state uses, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And so we're really looking at the feeders and which ones are really impacting, because when you put all, like Gadsden Middle that has 7 schools, well, 6 now, right, coming up to them, it makes a big difference when one of the campuses is or isn't proficient in some areas. The other piece is the only elementary that was also in designation is Vado Elementary for the EL group. And so again, we're looking at the data, trying to figure out what the piece is. We do know access needs to improve on that campus, the language test for that group. And so Ms. Tarazona again is working with her specialist, her data, Mr. Reyes, on trying to determine where the gap is for that group. But in regards to the points, we don't know how close they are to being out of designation, or are we at the bottom of the designation and things like that. Like for example, I believe Gadsden Elementary had a score of 44, and they're called traditional school, which is where we want to be. And then you have another elementary outside of our district who's at a 48, and they're a spotlight school, right? Or so I don't remember if they're a 40 or a 44, but we're just saying, so where is the cutoff? And where is it that we missed that point? We do have one spotlight school in our district, which is Alta Vista Early College. That's the only spotlight this year. And again, when we get the new designations for that. So right now we're kind of in limbo, but we have addressed our principals already, this group, and they have a whole plan. The PED has provided us like a folder, and they have to do all kinds of things that identify what their plan is going to be strategically, the funding they're receiving. You can be designated in these categories 3 years before the PED reconsiders, either depending where you move into, and then the district will decide if we need to reconstitute schools. So we have to decide if do we do the whole school, do we remove the administrators, do we remove some, so and that's not our goal. Our goal is to make sure we're growing as a district. So I just wanted to share this piece with you in case, because one of the questions was, why aren't our high schools on here? And because traditionally our high schools do well in the graduation rate compared to the rest of the state. So as you can see, the point distribution is different for elementaries and secondaries, right? So it makes sense that they didn't get there. But in looking at some of this data, Mr. Duggan is already looking, and he's making some projections for us. He'll share for us as a team who he feels may or may not make the cut next time around. But until we actually know what these points mean or represent, we are directing our people to let's just work toward improving where we're at right now, right? And so hopefully we'll have some of our schools move out of designation, but we're still not sure what's happening. And so if you notice here, I don't have a report card from before, but what they're doing is it's a report card model. If you remember before, you could look at accountability, attendance, and all those pieces. And so I don't know what they're going to call it. They're calling it the measures, points, and indicators. But the bottom line is we're gonna start getting, it's a grade, right? You're either this type of school, this type of school, this type of school. And so I just wanted to share that piece with you right now. And again, we are working with those campuses to determine where the need is and how the designation is. I know we've reached out to the PED. We haven't received any information. We feel that it was pushed out. They held it back 3 weeks, but I think federal guidelines require them to post this because we're behind already a year and a half. So until we catch up with the data, we won't know where we are. I know that we do have the federal government here at the state level working on the EL piece. They're really looking at that piece, and so we suspect that they will be at our districts across the country, the nation, the state, based on that Martinez Yazzie lawsuit. So we're working on that piece. That was the latest from Mrs. Tarazona. And so I don't know, I can share this piece with you because I know Mr. Dempsey shared kind of where the schools fell. I think overall we were very proud of the ones that were, many of those schools above the district average are cohort 1 Marzano schools. We do have 1 or 2 schools that were cohort 1, but with talking to our representatives from Marzano, they'll tell us like this school really needs a little bit more support, or you know, they have a lot of new teachers. Back to our point, I wanted to just piggyback on Estrella, why we brought in the new teachers a week before, because we found that when we were sitting as a team looking at how much time they're out of their classroom, I think it was like 38 days for a brand new teacher. Because remember, the PED requires them to do the LEAP and do other things on top of RPD. And so you don't have the teaching background, and then we're still pulling you out of a classroom for like, it was 28 days or something like, but it was still ridiculous, right? That's a lot of time for them to be out. And so these are the school designations. As you can see, you can be a spotlight school, that's the highest, and then above the 75th percentile, a traditional support school, which is where most of our schools want to fall. You're just in you know, you don't, I mean, we want to be a spotlight school, but I'm saying traditional is where you're at. Then you're a targeted support school, and then an additional targeted support school. And these are the Title I campuses that are performing in the lowest 5%. And then you go to CSI, which is where Desert Pride is. So our schools are in this category, ATSI. And only Desert Pride is a CSI right here. And they didn't make it based on performance, but again, because their number is so much smaller. We don't want to be an MRI school. This is the lowest performing schools, okay? And it tells you right here, the PED will require a forceful restructuring, right? And so I think that if hopefully nobody falls into this, but if we were to fall into this, then I think the district would take the measures before the PED. That way they don't have to tell us what to do. We would do, okay? So that's all I have on this piece. And then I know you're going to share the priority pieces. Did I have something else? Do you guys have any questions on this? Because this is really what's coming up right now for, it'll probably come up with parents as well as we try to explain it. And so we explain to the principals, you know, not to be so beat up about it yet, because we don't have specific, we just want them to make sure we're moving forward from here. We'll use this as a baseline because it doesn't help us using 16, 17, 18, and 19 data. I'm glad they didn't use pandemic data though, because we didn't test all the kids. Right.
One question.
Yes.
So, you mentioned that you did receive like some kind of packet or something from PED, but not really telling you where each one was standing, and so that they can target that. So you're just gonna have the schools address every single area?
Right. So we know, for example, that it was one school didn't make it because of the EL population. So what our department for Nubia's department, Ms. Tarazona's department, is looking at their data, looking to see if it's the new kids testing, if it's the Spanish component. They're really looking at we're looking at the data is what we're doing. How many kids stepped out, who's been here more than 3 years, who's out of program that maybe is an EL and didn't make the cut for the summatives, things like that. So they're looking at everything right now.
And you said they're receiving some funding. So is it the ATSI or
yes,
what is
all 5 schools and designations are receiving $51,000 from the PED. The PED actually sent us a folder with all kinds of guidelines and implementation award. They have to pay, they gave them a lot of guidelines on what they're doing is their New Mexico plan, their dash plan, their school plan is gonna have to be aligned to their designation and how they're going to improve these groups. And it has to be approved by the PED, so yes. And, you know, I'm hoping we get some spotlight schools this year, because we did have some schools who did well.
So I saw that the MRI, they're saying 2027. I mean, luckily we don't have any of them.
No.
But which means that they're actually just giving them, what, 3 years?
That's all you have, 3 years to turn around a school. That's.
Huh. Okay.
So there's a lot of accountability pieces, not just for them, but even for us as a district, because they'll have surveys as campuses to determine if we're supporting as well. And so that's good. I mean, that can only make the organization better. And so that's why we're implementing all kinds of things.
What I might add to that, thank you, Ms. Hernandez, is you see the raw numbers. Now, keep in mind, those are just raw numbers, and we don't know all the facts of how those numbers got generated. But, you know, what I think you as a board should be holding this group accountable, are you supporting those schools that look like are getting those lower scores, and how? Because, to Ms. Hernandez's point, in 3 years, we got to see some progress. And if we don't see some progress, I think the accountability that this group should have for me is, what did you do? Or what are you going to do? So, truthfully, and I'm not trying to rattle anybody, but if I can tell you, if I was a principal at that lower end, man, this next 2 years, I'm going to be taking some stuff really seriously. Because, you know, you look at, there's a wide range of how our elementaries especially performed. And so that's interesting. Now, we you know, and I just did it. It was a little part of my break, and we always try to compare to Las Cruces. So I just said, just do Las Cruces now. So I did. I pulled every one of their schools. Their elementaries did, on average, outperform us. But I'll tell you, they had 2 elementary schools, White Sands Elementary and Sonoma Elementary, up in almost high 50s. If you take those out, we're higher than them. The high school, Centennial, I don't know what Centennial was scoring up almost near 60. Centennial scored as high as early college high schools. So whatever they're doing. Now, if you take them out, we're actually, again, right on par with Las Cruces High, Mayfield, and that group. And then our middle schools outperformed them hands down. And so, you know, I know that's always a conversation, and I just spent a few minutes, it didn't take me long, and said, let's just do the averages and see where we fall, right? And let's just get to that right now, right? Let's just get that one off the table right now and see where we're at. But you know, the goal being, what I would, again, those schools that are in the lower performing, what are we doing to help them? We, the leadership team. And you heard about funding. You heard about what are we going to do to help ensure that they move. And that's really what I'm asking those principals. Move. I need you to, you don't have to go 100 miles an hour, but I got to know you're on the road and we're moving. We're not sitting still, because if we're sitting still, that's not going to be okay. Right? I remember, you know, one of my big things that I try to live by, it's a football thing, but Lou Holtz in Notre Dame, an organization can grow or die. Can't do anything else. So if you say, I'm maintaining, no, you're not. You're dying. You're not growing. So we have to just have that. And that's what I'm asking. And I think Principal Academy, we saw it. We already saw it. Of a good, positive attitude from their campus administrators.
Well, and I met with this team, all these schools and their APs and their instructional coaches yesterday. We had a really good meeting. So to Mr. Dempsey's point, they have a plan. They know their data. They're strong principals. They're very committed to improving. But, you know, they want to know where, like, if so we can be very strategic about it. And so, I mean, to Mr. Dempsey's point, I have no doubt they're going to move, right? We don't, they have a plan. They already came ready, and they just want to make sure that on our end that we support them, but we also have to, you know, hold our principals accountable. They have to hold their teachers accountable. They have to do what needs to be done. And so, yeah, I think we'll be okay.
Okay, next part, we had mentioned this survey, and it was these list of priorities, and I wanted you to get a feel for how different groups, through their lens, saw the list of priorities. So what you're seeing in front of you right now is this is district leadership, and you know, what they thought the priorities should be. And so the highest ranking one there is implementation of high reliability schools. And I think it makes sense. The leadership team knows the level of investment that has been made there, and want to make sure that we maximize it. Well, actually, that is the highest. Next one is chronic absenteeism, and then the third in terms of number tied, safety and security, and Gadsden Middle School construction. So you know, I think people feel like that's from the leadership, and it's interesting. So here in just a minute, well, in fact, I'll go ahead and pull it up. Let's do campus administration. So there's more of them, obviously, but let's just see what their priorities are. The highest one is a 29. High reliability schools. Do you see, right? Their second most important, though, and think of it from a campus perspective, my scores. I don't understand how we got here, and I want to make sure I understand how to move this, right? Which makes a ton of sense. And I think it says your campus teams care. They want to see the success of your school. So that I think that's good in them. Next two are tied with chronic absenteeism and MLSS, which makes a ton of sense that they're focused on tier 1, tier 2 instruction and what's happening there. Okay? So, questions, thoughts, ideas, do you want to add to the list of priorities? Is there something that came up that you said, hey, you didn't even mention this? Because the next thing I would ask you to do is fill out yours. And you should have received the email now. Yeah.
Now they did.
Now you should have. It got stuck in my drafts. I don't know why. Sorry. Is there something I missed? Because I could easily add it. No. Okay. Do you guys want to take a few minutes? Are you comfortable doing now? So this is a couple ways we can do this. We can take 10 minutes, let you guys fill out your top 3, and then we can talk about it. We could call it a day, fill out your top 3, and then we already have an item on the agenda to talk about.
I think that'd probably be good.
Is that what you would like? Right?
Yeah.
I didn't receive it.
I just want to retouch on 2 things real quick.
Okay.
The first one is going back to dual language. Okay. And I've noticed this because in my district, the fact that 6th grade and 7th grade doesn't have a dual language, but when we get into the high school, we have a dual language. Do they fall behind?
They have dual language, Mr. At Riverside, yes.
Well,
that's the only school that's doing it.
Once you get past Riverside,
right.
The middle school, I guess, I'm sorry, I probably got the wrong school.
No, 7th grade also has it. The implementation was there last year. We started it.
Okay.
So now the transition is all the way.
Okay.
It's going now into the high school. I think now you're at 10th grade, or I can't remember. That all the high schools except for Chaparral High, right? Is that correct? It's moving up, right? Because it's barely coming into the Chaparral Middle School. They hadn't it's on its way. It's just Chaparral is a year behind.
Okay.
Depends on your year of implementation. Remember, once you implement, you got to follow the first group through over time. And once you have that first group all the way to 12th grade, you should have an option across.
Yeah. So I think if I don't remember Chaparral if it's already going to the 9th grade or if we are 8th grade.
Let us do an update.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Mr. Cano, if that were a priority, you would put English learners. That's what it would be under. Like
English learner? Okay.
That's a priority for you, English learners, and then we can take the detail we've heard today, build those action plans, and again, we're going to bring those action plans back to the board and say, hey, this is what we think we learned. Is this what you meant? And you might say yes, or you might say, well, you're missing something there. No, that's not what we meant.
And I think to Ms. Flores' point, it's very interesting because the dual language piece hasn't trickled all the way up to the high school, like at Gadsden High, and Santa Teresa High had more of the bilingual literacy students, I believe. SEALs.
On any of these priorities, where would support and mentorship of administrators fall under? So that way We make sure.
Mentorship
so
for
I think-
administrators.
I don't know, is that professional development?
Is it on?
Yeah, professional development's on there, but if you're asking for more support for admin, that's professional under PD.
Okay, so that could fall under.
I would
Okay,
put it under PD because then you put you
Flores
have
to
an
answer?
actual
Yeah.
open piece in there that you put, and we look at the
To answer a little bit for
comments.
mentorship for principals is something that we have never really done officially. This year we were approved on Title II already to develop a mentorship program for administrators. So I have the funding, and we are gonna start working on the program of how we're gonna do it because now the funding is approved.
And actually, CES,
Now we
Mr.
have
Chavez is
So
one
we're
that
gonna
has
start
reached
working on
out to
that.
us.
And
Yeah.
then okay, so awesome. So
Yes.
and then the other thing I
So
just
we have never done it. We don't tell you. We cannot tell you yet how we're gonna do it because this is a work in progress because we're approved.
you have awarded mentors to new principals.
Yes. Yeah, we already have a couple of principals mentoring, but we're gonna have it like a very structured mentorship program. The way we have the mentorship for our teachers, we're gonna have it for administrators,
okay, awesome.
and Ms. Barras is gonna be working on it.
And I would just add this is
Mhm.
my personal opinion, and actually it was mentioned in our trainings, is that like under professional development, it would be awesome to see the idea of coaching coming into place, because I like the idea of maybe not anytime soon as far as for us, because there could be coaches for board members, for the board, coaches for the superintendent, and then coaches for the principals. And what I mean by this is I am enrolled in a program. And I don't know if you know Elisa Veguera. She is the superintendent of Lake Arthur Municipal Schools. And so what's awesome is that I asked her, is there mentorship or coaching for superintendents for board? She goes, yeah, it's available. And the whole idea is that way there's accountability at all levels to make sure that there's the systems of support for everybody, from us being up here to Mr. Dempsey to the principals, so that because with the whole idea of coaching is the answers are within. It's the of questioning to get it out of them. So just wanted to throw that out.
What other items? Yeah.
Just one more question that they sent to me, and it has to do with the substitutes. Okay, do substitutes teach the students, or do the students start learning once the teacher comes in? So I guess that.
Good. So we did have again a substitute orientation, and one of the things I emphasized is that the substitutes are responsible for two things: implementing lesson plans, right? Facilitating the lesson plans. So they just have to carry out what the teacher has planned, right? And the other is keeping the students safe and engaged.
Correct.
So the answer to your question would be, if they're carrying out the teacher's lesson plans, then yes, they're learning. But they do not have to develop
A lesson plan.
the plan for learning. And then, and realistically, some of them responded, many of our schools don't have lesson plans for us. And my response was, we need to know, let us know at HR. We're not going to say you said it, but we will work with those campuses and those classrooms to ensure that there are lesson plans. But it's to facilitate the lesson plan, right? Carry it out, and then and to make sure students are safe and engaged.
Okay.
I want to mention something too, because I don't want it to catch side blind. And I am a little behind, but this will all happen in the next few weeks. But this year, the campus administrators' attendance. So professional development didn't count against them, district meetings, but they're out. Their number of days out is on their evaluation. And we, on average, the average right now, which I think is far too high, 17 days. From August to May. June and July don't count. Because in my mind, June and July, students are off campus. You want to take those days off, take them off. If I don't see you in June and July, that's fine. But I worry about the precedents we set. If I'm the leader of a campus and I'm out regularly, right? What am I saying to my teachers? What am I saying to my kids? What statement am I making? And it ranged from, I had one principal with 1 day out, all the way to 33. And 33 is horrendous in my eyes. Not FMLA, not medical, right? Nothing, right? Because any of that gets excused. I use my sick days, 33 days or vacation leave. So.
Agree 100%. And so will also central office be under the same spectrum? And then I would challenge all of us as board members that it is very important, if this is the expectation for administrators, that this be also an expectation of ourselves. With what I mean is coming to events like this, conferences, being in attendance to board meetings, and of course, granted that things happen in life. But yeah, if we're going to have those expectations for our teachers and our administrators, it starts with us as board members.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's what I'll do. I started it last week and I got distracted. I'll do the average for the leadership team. I'm pretty safe to say we're far below 17. Far below 17. Rosie's donated more days back to the district than any employee in, I think, the history of the district. So she's just an example of, it. To your point, we should be setting the example. They should know what that number is, but I think we've got to really emphasize, in my eyes, this coming year, attendance at work, at school, is important. Right? Okay. So the question is, how do you guys want to proceed? Are you comfortable with the information you have? Maybe you want to process it a little bit, sleep on it, right? That's a lot. You might want to ask a few questions. You can email any one of us. But then the goal being, I need to get, if you can get this to me by Monday, just complete your survey, then we can formalize those, and then at the next board meeting we'll have an opportunity. We'll be it's under action because I didn't know how far we'd get. We'll probably table it, but we can at least have the conversation and say, here's what the numbers look like. Here's what our action plans are thinking. Let's talk about this for a second, and then I'll come back to you next month and we'll stamp it approved. Now, when I say stamp it approved, I also want you to think in your mind, these are the things at the end of the year you're expecting me, superintendent, and the leadership team to accomplish. Okay, this is what we're going to come back. There'll be 100 other things that'll come our way and we'll deal with, and right. But these are the things that truly reflect on us successful year or not so successful. Fair enough? Okay. Okay. I appreciate everybody and your time, and I didn't time. I was going to time it to say, well, it'll quit raining right when we stop. I didn't make that happen, so I apologize. Right. Just be safe. Yeah, always be safe going down the hill.